budget is going to be much more effective. So, yeah. Anyway, so I'm agreeing with myself now, aren't I? I'm agreeing with you. Who's agreeing with me? So. Hello and welcome to episode 305 of the Effing Marketing Podcast from Rockstar CMO and Venture B, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. Hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host Ian Truscott, and on this show I chat with a band of marketing chums to share our marketing street knowledge, which hopefully will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. This week, Jeff Clark, our resident strategist and former Forrester research director, and I are inspired by an article by Dave Kellogg that describes the pipeline crisis in B2B. And we pick 5 of the best remedies of the 13 he lists in that article. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. After this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word. We'll be right back.
Hello, Ian. Welcome to the Rockstar CMO studio.
Thank you very much, mate. How are you?
I am doing well. Looking out on a sunny but chilly day here in Massachusetts. How about yourself?
Oh, the nicest. Well, I like sunny and chilly, and I do not have sunny and chilly today. We have mild and wet.
Lovely.
Which some people like because they like the warmer weather, but personally, I prefer the crisp, bright days and a nice winter stroll. That's my idea at this time of year. And also, as you can see, and I know the listener can't see, but it's dark.
It's getting darker. Getting dark, but it's getting darker later.
That's true. We're past the winter equinox, so. But today, because it's been grey and windy, rainy and dark, it's never truly got light. Do you know what I mean? You're in a funk all day, aren't you? Anyway, so that's the weather, and we are. But you're off to. We're going to miss you for a couple of weeks, aren't we? Because you're going to change your weather.
Off to the Caribbean,
nice.
Which is like someplace I have been, but that was a long time ago. So
nice.
Yes.
Nice.
It'll be warm. It'll definitely be warmer.
Well, your gain will be our loss. So I'm not seeing you for a couple of weeks, but enjoy the warm weather. So it's a shame we can't do a weather report from there. I should buy you a traveling microphone. All right. Well, I better figure out a way to transition to this week's topic, and we're going to talk about coping with the pipeline crisis. Inspired by a blog post from Dave Kellogg on Kellblog that he published. Published it in November, but it's something we've been sort of chatting about.
It dovetails well with other things we have been talking about.
It's true, it does, yeah. And the article is called "How to Navigate the Pipeline Crisis." Now, it's not normal for us to just discuss a blog post article, but if I'll include a link to it in the show notes, and the listener can see, this is more than just a blog post. This is quite a chunky thing, isn't it? With lots of references to lots of data that we'll get onto. And I've gone off script of my opening for this, but it's been common it's a number of articles and blog posts that we've seen, right? And that's it kind of brings together a lot of the challenges from zero-click search, the loss of organic traffic, paid search becoming more expensive, disruption of AI, and all the sort of research that we've been discussing a lot over the last few months, that buyers are not engaging with vendors in their research buying phase, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that Dave Kellogg does a good job of sort of bringing all that together, right? And if you don't know who Dave Kellogg is, he's the former CEO of MarkLogic and CMO of Business Objects, and he's a respected B2B industry commentator these days. I'm assuming you knew who he was, right, Jeff?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so the article, as I mentioned, is called the Pipeline Crisis. And some of the data he pulls actually isn't just the sort of articles we discuss on this podcast, but also he was talking about some data about the rise in the cost of acquisition, that there's reports that pipelines are down and that SaaS stock prices are also down. So he sees a big pattern going on. So a long intro to the show, but just there's a lot of context, I think, to add there when we're going to talk about just an article. And I think if I share all of the articles and research that Kellogg refers to in his post, we'd be here for at least an hour. But it does support this hypothesis that he's got. And in the post, in the article, and I will let you talk in a moment, Jeff, and he makes 13 suggestions. And we're not going to go through all 13. 13 suggestions of what we B2B marketers should do. And we, in our usual effing editorial policy, are going to pick our favorite effing 5. Or maybe, Jeff, you might notice something he's missed and pick on that. So what say you, Jeff?
Well, as you pointed out, his blog post has lots of references to other research. It says, you got to check this out and check this out. And I was intrigued by his reference to a post by an Andrew Chen that said that the title of the post was "Every Marketing Channel Sucks Right Now," which, hey, that's a good way to start the year. It's just like it can't get much worse. But anyway, if listeners want to dig into the blog post, you'll see lots of interesting things. But it does reinforce, as you said, many of the discussions we've had over the end of 2025, in which we talked about disruptions, to the way we've been doing marketing over the past decade or so. And I was encouraged about his agreement, with arguments to focus back on brand, vis-a-vis demand. Because we over-rotated. I think I wrote it wrong, but we over-rotated to address short-term ROI concerns. That the C people were saying, what's our return on this? So I think there's some sort of good overall points, and I think his 13 remedies I think are good. So let's we pick our top 5.
I did actually I also mentioned this article in our newsletter too. So there's some more, I've put some more data in the Beat newsletter, which you can find on our website, the Rockstar CMO.com, and just click on newsletter. And where were we? Oh yeah, and the brand thing. There's a really nice couple of paragraphs, isn't there, where he talks about brand and that over rotation, and that we were enabled by the CEO and CRO and CFO. I think the article is almost worth reading just for those 3 paragraphs, which is cool. So anyway, I mentioned that we're going to pick 5. You're going to pick 3, and I'll pick 2 and do the summary. So let's get started with number 1. What are you going to go with first?
Number 1, think holistically, which seems like, that's where he started. It seems like a good place to start. But he's talking about this isn't about the balancing brand and demand or other things that marketing does, as mentioned, but it's really about being agile with your investments. So he encourages CMOs to look across pipeline sources and channels of generating engagement and see, what's working and what's not working, and do this on a regular basis. Obviously, preparing for quarterly reviews is important, but I think in terms of working with your team, it's more effective to do this more frequently. And, don't be afraid to shift investments away from what's not working into what is working, or test new tactics, because that's one of the things that we talk about that a lot, is to make sure you're testing. But I think, given what we've been talking about in the past couple of months about things and the channel's not working, if all channels suck, okay, we got to find a different way to get the engagement we're looking for. And I think the important point, which he doesn't really mention, but I thought it was like, don't leave it to the teams to make the calls. It's like you could say, hey, I want you guys to, give me recommendations. You really participate yourself, because one of the things you want to look at is if sales is doing a better job of building pipeline than marketing or building engagement, then it's like, well, how can we support sales doing what they're doing? You really have to be nimble, and, particularly with the concept of AI engines getting in the way, being that new persona that we have to address, you likely need to find new ways of connecting with the prospects. So taking an agile approach, both as you balance between sales and marketing actions, and as you're balancing tactic mechanisms within marketing, it's the only way to regain momentum.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there was quite a range of suggestions in that post that were kind of high level, like this one, and kind of very tactical. And I think
Yeah.
that one was, and also what I've thought, and when I was reviewing it, was I wanted to share something on here that was kind of, worth talking about, because some of it was like business as usual sort of, and I think if you go and look at the article, you'll probably see what I mean. Is some of this stuff is like, but I think that's a really good point, that we need to lift our head up a little bit and look across. And I think the point you made there about if something that sales is doing is working is important, because I think now sales are increasingly doing a lot of their own business development. We've got AI SDRs on the floor these days. We've got them using their LinkedIn prospecting tools and all that kind of stuff. We need to look at that and support it and bring that into our, revenue operations and make sure that's being done together, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that actually helps lead to number 2, and that's over to you. What is the second?
Yeah, I nearly stole my own thunder there, because this is actually the second piece of advice he gives is account-based marketing, which we've discussed a few times on this show. And his advice is to do targeted outreach on key accounts, leveraging both marketing and human channels, e.g. SDRs, both digital and dimensional assets. I think that's interesting. Dimensional assets as a term of physical things like branded moleskins and intimate live events. But the thing is basically to do ABM, right? And to choose different channels in which to engage. And I think the reason I picked this one is I probably wanted the opportunity to write about on our hobby horse that we think ABM is just good B2B sales and marketing, right? Whatever you sell in B2B, if you can identify an ICP, you can identify a market target accounts that have the right attributes, and then you can address them, right? That is just plain old good B2B marketing. I think we're both agreed on that, right, Jeff?
Agree.
Plus, the other bugbear I have with ABM, so I don't really want to come across that I'm disagreeing with Dave Kellogg. What I'm agreeing with him, because I think we should all be doing this, right? Because I also, the thing I don't like about against account-based marketing, and I've had this experience before, is it's not just a marketing motion. We can't do it alone. And if we do, it won't be so effective if your sales team are chasing every squirrel, right? You need sales to have a similar target account motion that's in sync with yours. And that needs to be built around good process and the CRM, right? And we need to agree as a revenue department that we're doing target-based sales and marketing, not just this is suddenly a marketing problem, right?
Agree. And I think the term ABM does fall down on 2 counts. One is it can't just be marketing. That's the point you make. And the other point is the well-defined ICP leads you to a list of target accounts that you need to address. And so, it's like, sales and marketing need to be in sync on what those are. And I love the quote he used from a CRO who we didn't quote by name, but the quote is, if by ABM you mean us picking our customers as opposed to them picking us, then I'm in favor. Because that makes marketing more effective, it makes sales more effective. And my experience with a couple of companies where we did work with a really well-defined target account model, it made it easier for marketing to figure out what to do to engage accounts. And it also made the impact, we could have greater impact with, typically a relatively light budget, because again, you're not trying to do spray and pray, which can get expensive, particularly in this day and age.
Yeah, especially as you, we recognize the fact that, a prospective buyer needs to see you and touch you a number of times before you enter their consciousness and their decision-making process. We've also talked about how the decision-making process is moving much earlier in the process for them before they contact us. So if you can really, really focus all your resources on the right people, your budget is going to be much more effective. So, yeah. Anyway, so I'm agreeing with myself now, aren't I? I'm agreeing with you. Who was agreeing with me? So it's cool. So what's your number 3? What's the third one you picked out?
Get good at AEO.
Yeah.
which AEO is answer engine optimization. So this
Yeah.
directly addresses the challenge of how to address the fact that AI engine has become a persona that sits between you and the prospect. And this is a strategy that helps create content that directly answers questions that pop up in AI search, voice assistants, chatbots, etc. So the goal is to appear, in more ChatGPT citations, rather than saying, we got to be in the top 5 of a Google search ranking. It's like, well, we got to be in those citations that ChatGPT or other search or other AI engines are looking for. So let's see if we can do that. And so this is new territory, but as I was thinking about this, it really relies on tactics that we likely are already using. So, getting videos on YouTube, getting customer advocacy mentions in social feeds or on Reddit, doing blogs, getting influencers to comment about us. And so the engines are looking for quality information in addition to quantity that you might get with Google search ranking, but they're also looking for content that relates to the discussion you'd be having with a prospect, as opposed to hyping your own leadership or listing features and benefits. So it has to be formatted to address questions. And in a reference piece from this blog that was on LinkedIn, I like the comment, your help center is now a growth channel, because your help center is basically addressing questions that prospects ask. Does your product do X? So these questions are fodder for GPT. So you've got to be able to get that content out there in that kind of Q&A format, providing the answer.
And we've talked about this before, and this is quite an exciting area in it, and people are unsure about how this is going to work because, as you say, it is unknown territory, because we don't actually know how much linky love we're going to get from ChatGPT. Because
linky love.
I always because it will just answer the question. It's the same with the current Google answers, right? It'll give you the answer to the question, and maybe that there's more and more zero click happening, or less and less clicks happening, which is probably the way to put it. But what I think is interesting about this AEO stuff is, when you talk about in most sales methodologies, you talk about engineering the vision of the buyer, right? It's how do they feel about solving the problem? This is where that's going to happen, right? So you need to be influencing the questions that the buyer is going to ask of ChatGPT, as well as the answers it's going to get, right? So you're going to need to get out there with your view of how to solve a particular problem, and that this is the way and the truth, and educate ChatGPT to give that answer. But also, it all relies on the prompt, doesn't it? Is what is the buyer going to ask? So we need to start to create these sort of air cover campaigns that make the buyer curious about solving the problem, that they then go to ChatGPT and then hopefully come back to us. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes me think it's kind of a multi-level engineering problem, because it's like you kind of need to engineer your content to be addressing questions that are addressing a particular need a customer has. But then as they're getting information from you, you want to reposition how the solution may come to bear. So that makes for a very interesting way of approaching your content.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we go back to our fundamentals, and we're trying to address customer needs, usually the needs are common. It's the way we address it that becomes, differentiating. And so, the needs, since they're common, there should be common language. As long as you're talking the language of the customer, there should be common language to hook people on.
Yeah, it's the old school being the best answer kind of thing, isn't it? So
yeah. So what is number 4?
Number 4, or my second one. Obviously there were 13 of these things. I could have picked many of them. The one that I picked was leverage the CEO. And the reason why I picked it's a bit of a tactical one, I know, and there might have been better options as I, start to apologize and regret my choices. But in my defense, I'm usually on this show to talk about content, right? While you talk about marketing operations and all that good stuff. And I picked on this because I think that, he's very specific. He says leverage the CEO. I think it's broad on that. It's actually leverage your internal influence and stuff. But here he's talking about leverage the CEO via social media, LinkedIn, podcast appearances and speeches. And I like this as general advice for content marketers because obviously the platform's algorithms prefer content from people. And of course, people prefer content from people, right? Nobody wants to hear from your fucking brand. And I think this is especially true for startups and early stage companies, or maybe companies we've talked about when we talked about the STARS model, that are doing a serious pivot or realignment, as I think the founder story or the story of a new leader can be really valuable content in building awareness and sort of trust in why this company exists, why it's taking this direction, why are we solving the problem this way. And I also think it's great content for firing up employee advocacy and influence. As I say, I think this is a team game. It's not just the CEO. As they're more likely to share a human story, especially if it makes them look good in front of the boss. And if the boss has got a strong profile that then makes them look good amongst their peers, than sharing a branded story that we're the leading data-driven AI-powered doohickey, right? If they can show us, if they can share a story about a guy that cares about them, right? Or a gal that cares about them. And the interesting thing is that in delivering this, obviously there's the usual channels, social media, LinkedIn, podcast appearances and stuff. But I also wouldn't completely discount sort of paid profiles that you can do with various media outlets. And we tend to be fairly cynical of these things because we think that, everybody will know it's a paid profile, but they don't. I did it once with a CEO kind of against my better judgment and in a moment of weakness, but it made great impact with the staff, and it was one of the successful things we did that quarter. Everybody loved it, right? And I also think that, sorry to wang on, I know it was only supposed to be a little tactical thing, but
it's a big tactical thing.
I'm getting on a bit of a hobby horse about this. It's also great for attracting talent and doing your HR marketing, which is also part of our job, right? Especially if you're in a growing organization. And the other day, a job ad floated through my feed, and if you look in my LinkedIn profile, you'll see me referring to this. It was a company in Stockholm, and they were talking about the importance of culture, and they'd like people to come into the office, which obviously every company says, right? But what I think was different about this was they actually had a video from the CEO telling his story and his vision for the culture of the organization, which made that point much more trustworthy rather than it was just a bunch of meaty words from HR, right? Is that this, and it also gave you a true sense of what it's probably like to work for that organization. Love it or not, right? But it's a good thing to do. And I think that this is a core piece of content marketing, isn't it? You're showing who you're for, but also showing who you're not for, right? So I think that's what you can do through the CEO. So those are my thoughts on that. What do you think?
Well, hopefully that Swedish CEO was somebody that other people wanted to go to the office to hang out with, because if he looks a bit scary, you'd be like, oh, geez, I want you in your desk.
As he sits there in a bloodstained apron or something, sharpening a knife.
So I think, this is great if your CEO wants to be a public face of a company. And that's kind of the caveat, is that I've had experiences where there were CEOs who just absolutely didn't want to play this role for whatever reason. Maybe they don't get, maybe you got to convince them. Maybe their colleagues are like, well, he's kind of a live wire. We don't want him to get out there and saying the things that we hear him say. But it doesn't mean that there isn't another senior executive that would want to play this role. At one company I worked for, the CFO stepped up to play that role and it was great because the financials of the company were generally positive. So, and he was a good person, or, he projected well, worked out well. He was good in front of customers. He was actually good at presenting at, user conferences and other customer meetings. So, and depending on your offerings, maybe it's a technical leader like a CTO, a head of development. Absolutely. So a variety of people could play this. And maybe there's a founder. Again, in other companies that I've worked for that were technical, there was like a technical founder who was not necessarily, one of the C-level leaders of the executive team, but they came with the credibility because they were the ones that helped found the product. So any way you look at it, a senior executive should be out there publicly, particularly if they're the type who, frequently deals with customers, because this can help you tell the story and you address those prospect customer concerns. And the flip side of the caveat is that, at least one company I worked at where the CEO was incredibly good in front of customers, really good speaker. I mean, it just made such a difference in the world of marketing.
I think, I mean, that's exactly. I mean, hallelujah, brother. I mean, you're preaching to the converted there for me, for sure. Because I agree. If the CEO is not going to do it, then absolutely that you find another executive that can, or a leader, or a thought leader, or something like that. So completely agree. So let's round this thing up with the fifth. What's your number 5?
Build first party audiences. And this is, this kind of builds on a number of the ones we've been talking about already, but it's like, if you can't get traction on third party sites, then build your own. And we both have done this in the past, and, companies build blog sites, create YouTube channels, podcasts, newsletters. And this is like, hey, this is like what we do, so this is music to our ears. But what I like about this approach is that the content that you would develop for any of these channels is content that would directly address questions your buyers, your customers are having. So it's a natural feed to those questions that prospects would be asking their AI engine. And in fact, getting customers on your YouTube channel or on your podcast and letting them talk about how they made their buying decision, what questions they asked, why your answers, you, the vendor answers, led them to you, et cetera. I mean, this is great content that can be repurposed in other channels, which also made me think about, a post that you made recently where you cited the state of the newsletter 2026, which newsletters continue to be a valuable mechanism to address prospect and customer issues. So these are tools that, again, it's kind of like we've got some new challenges, but if we think about how we use tools that have been working for us in the past, we can maybe alter them so that they work in this new environment. And and again, a lot of these tools will help address those customer issues. They'll develop trust with your customers, and they'll amplify your brand, which is always important.
Absolutely. And there's it's that whole rented land, owned land thing, right? Is that if you can get people, if you can start building an addressable audience, that's going to be far more valuable than likes and follows and stuff on the social media channel that could change its algorithm moment's notice, right? So I think that's cool. Good so point. That's our 5 then, my friend. So we've gone with we went with number 1 was think holistically. Number 2, account-based marketing, although we just think that's just good B2B marketing. Number 3, get good at AEO. And number 4, leverage the CEO or some other leader in the business. And number 5, build your first party audience. So that's a good set, isn't it? Out of his 13. And I'd encourage the listener to go look at the original article. I'll put it in the show notes and see what you think of the 13 that he suggested. And maybe you've got some different ideas. So we conclude then with a song. And as I'm going to lose you for a couple of weeks from the podcast, I'm going to give you free choice on this one.
That's very, very nice of you to do that. So I am pulling one from back in my my younger years, a David Bowie hit called "Panic in Detroit," and I think the title kind of says it. In the song, it's a kind of a different panic, but hey, it's something where if you just think holistically and think about how you're addressing those AI engines out there, I think we can get through this panic and make 2026 successful.
It's funny, on the similar topic, I chose Panic by the Smiths for the newsletter. It seems like we're in sync in thinking about this as a panic. All right, buddy. And so I'll see you here in the studio in a couple of weeks' time. And
sounds good.
Thank you very much, mate. Have a great holiday.
Take care.
Cheers, buddy. Bye-bye.
Panic
Thank you, Jeff. I'll be honest, although I'm quite familiar with David Bowie, I'd never heard that track until today. But that was a tiny bit of Panic in Detroit from 1973. And as we mentioned there, Jeff is now off to sunnier climes and Kathy McKnight will be in the studio next week. So that's a wrap on episode 305 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks to Jeff for his insight and to you for putting a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. You can find links to Jeff, me, and the link to the article we discussed with Dave Kellogg in the show notes, along with links to the blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes at rockstarcmo.com. Coming up this week, Robert Rose will be in our virtual bar on Saturday, and next week, Kathy and I will be chatting about whether having a content management system is still top of the CMO's MarTech shopping list. So I hope you join us for that here at Rockstar CMO FM.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.